Hi there, my name's Sam Saggers. Welcome along to today's talk. I'm going to be with you for the next 45 minutes, helping you understand a little bit about opportunities in Sydney, what we can actually do to make some money, as well as identifying some areas which are looking pretty good when it comes to actually getting into the very hard Sydney marketplace. Of course, Sydney is an expensive marketplace and it's not smart to take on much debt in the Sydney marketplace. So today we're going to examine properties which are actually virtually neutrally geared. In other words, you're not going to pay much to own the properties because the rents are going to do the work for you. This is the best way to buy in Sydney right now because the average yield across Sydney is very, very low, meaning people are heavily negatively geared, paying for property out of their back pocket, making the banks wealthy. I tell you what, I don't like doing that. I like making sure my tenants pay the rents for me. A little bit about me, my experience, 25 years as a property investor, been in the industry for so long. I've written plenty of books around property investment. Today, I want to talk to you about what is happening in Sydney, the state of the Sydney market. We're going to do a suburb focus and a property spotlight. So stay tuned. It's going to go for about 40 minutes. So make sure you get pretty comfortable, grab a cup of tea, and I'm going to talk you through what is actually happening. Is history repeating itself? And today's theme is really understanding a little bit about the past, about what areas have done really, really well. And so you can position yourself for property growth and location growth in a very, very, very flat Sydney marketplace. Sydney will hit 8 million people by 2051. Today, it is Australia's first city to reach 5 million people. So owning real estate in such a big city is a very smart thing to do. Of course, it's well publicised right now, and I'm speaking to you in September 2018. The city market is going through a little bit of a trough. But owning real estate over the long term in Sydney, of course, is always a smart thing. Sydney is kind of the number one city globally recognized within Australia. So, of course, it's a great place to own real estate. But where can we do it well? Where can we do it cheap? Where can we do it so that essentially we've got a good level of dynamic around rental return? So here's just some sort of dynamics around where the Sydney market is going, reaching 7.6 million people by 2056. Some people have reported closer to 8 million people. So today, sitting at around 5 million people, of course, it's going to grow. Of course, it's going to need more infrastructure. Of course, rents are going to go up. Of course, property values are going to go up. You cannot add another 3 million people in virtually 30 years without impacting on property prices moving again. Sydney today is, of course, home to the world's rich and famous, and by virtue of that, and by virtue of its natural beauty, it has some of the most expensive real estate in the world. For example, the square metre rates for opera residences is sitting at around $100,000 a metre. In fact, recent sales just down at Circular Quay of new apartments stretching to $40 million. Staggering amount of money to be paid for apartments. So it's so interesting that in a city ring now of Sydney is expensive. You go 1, 2, 3 kilometres from the city, you're paying multi-million dollars, not for the housing market, for the apartment market. It is really, really, really expensive. From mountains to ocean, Sydney is landlocked. You can't sprawl to the north because you've got National Park. You cannot sprawl to the south, you've got National Park. To the west, you've got the mountain range, and to the east, of course, the Pacific Ocean. The only way Sydney can continue to grow is vertically. And today, really, that is how the recycle of new properties are entering the Sydney market. Sydney is really on its way to become a vertical city. because there is no land left. It is built out. And so interesting dynamic around, of course, the long-term viability of real estate when you are a landlocked city. Today, New South Wales is a strong economy. And if we look at New South Wales performance, and of course the property market is a little flat at the moment in Sydney, and even going down in value in some places, we are seeing, though, it has nothing to do with economics. If we look at New South Wales, it's got a great demand for growth, over 3.7%. Retail turnover strong, population growth strong, employment growth is strong. The drivers, low interest rates, robust global growth, strong job growth, strong population growth, and infrastructure spreads. The challenges, low wages. Now, low wages only impact you if you've overspent on real estate. Today, I'm going to show you real estate where wages can afford it, where rents can afford it, where it's not going to cost you money to own the asset. Exciting times. And of course, because of the challenge of the tighter credit crunch, what we can do now is buy well. We can actually buy on the counter cycle and negotiate really hard and get yourself a discount. So if we got ourselves a discount and we got a property that pays for itself, we're facing those challenges head on. Now, Sydney has grown so well. In fact, its population growth is the envy of many of the established global world cities. You can see it's grown faster than Singapore, Hong Kong, Madrid, San Francisco, London, Amsterdam, Toronto, Washington, New York City, Chicago, Paris, and Tokyo. Today, New South Wales, Sydney, along with Melbourne, that's not on this graph, is just a powerhouse when it comes to population growth. So people are still moving to Sydney to live for economic opportunities. Sydney is growing from a population standpoint, and it's leading the world by virtue of being such a successful area. Now, property values have decreased by 1.1% over the last 3 months, 5% over the past year. Houses have decreased the most, 7%, and units pretty steady, but a minor decrease of 1.6%. Obviously, the affordability is more in the apartment space than the housing space, so the housing space has more to contract than the apartment space. But it's interesting, if we look at the rolling index of growth, we can see Sydney has traditionally gone through peaks and troughs. We're looking at the red one today, and we can see that we're now dropping down in value, and that's where the opportunity is. We can buy in the trough, not in the high. Now, we're going to talk about this rolling index through this slide deck because it's important, because there was other periods that we've purchased and got growth, and purchased and got growth throughout my time as a property investor. And I want to share some of my experiences so that if you don't own property in Sydney, or you're looking to get involved in the Sydney market, you can buy well. We're going to use some history of past cycles to do that. Today, there are some 16,000 apartments under construction in Sydney, but what it's looking like is the future. There are really a slow up of projects. Construction is falling off a cliff. You can see literally 2018, this is the year when things are soft. This is the year you can get a deal. And then things really become quite low into 2019, 20, really no starts in 2021, 2022. If we look at the graph of inner Sydney, we can see the inner east has 3.2% of stock, the inner north 17%, the inner west 18%, Sydney City 22%, and the inner south 39%. Today, we're going to be focusing on that inner west precinct, and really where stock levels are are really, really good. It's a moderate, the inner east, there's no stock, but it's expensive. The inner north, stock's comparable to the inner west, but it's expensive. Sydney, expensive. We're going to find you opportunity in the inner west of Sydney today. If we look at the legend around where Sydney's affordability is, you can see for yourself most of the inner ring of Sydney today, within the 10-kilometre ring, over $1.4 million. There's nothing left. There's no land left. If we go a little bit further out, 11, 12 kilometres, we can start to see that inner west precinct starts to lend itself to opportunity. The average value, 1.4 million. What if we could go to some of those inner west suburbs and pick up a property for $475,000? That's where we're going today. We're going to hunt within this really first ring of Sydney, and we're going to look for some dynamic opportunities. Sydney today has a massive infrastructure spend. Sydney Metro, the light rail upgrades, mainly what you're seeing is rail and road expansion. From Parramatta to the city, from northwest to the city to Sydney South, things are changing. New South Wales is spending money on infrastructure. It's really trying to play catch up for so many years of really poor planning and infrastructure. So the beautiful thing about people buying from 2018 to 22 is they are going to catch an infrastructure wave. But where should we go? And today we're going to talk about one of the best pockets for urban gentrification because of infrastructure. The inner and middle ring. Now, I'll tell you what, the inner and middle ring is expensive. If we wanted to focus in on one bedrooms and we went to the north, we're $700,000 entry level. $700,000 entry level with a rent of $500 a week. Not good enough. Too much money coming out of your back pocket. Prestige market, but too expensive. If we went to the inner north, the NIMBY suburbs, the school belt suburbs, the Lane Coves, the Gordon, $700,000 one-bedroom apartment renting for $500 a week. Not good enough. It's going to cost you too much money to own. You're going to be pouring money out of your back pocket. You're going to take on debt. We don't want you to do that. We want you to make sure you're debt-free. The rent is paying for the mortgage. What about the rich parts? The city, the east, $1 million for a one-bedroom apartment renting for $600 a week. Not good enough. It's going to hurt your back pocket. Don't want you to do it. We need to keep searching. What about the inner west? Well, the ranges can go from $480,000 to $1 million. We can find places, cool, hip, gentrification places, migrant, cultural, inner market places, grungy. And today we're going to check out where we can do that, where the urban renewal is, and where you can buy a $480,000 property renting for $480 a week. Why is that important? Because your back pocket is not paying for the asset to grow. The tenants market is. Then we've got the inner south. These are areas like Zetland, Alexandra. They're driven by urban renewal. They're overseas investment markets. They are no-go zones for lendings. They're on banks' blacklist. One bedrooms can hit $800,000 renting for $500 a week. But I tell you what, don't go there. Too much supply, too much stock, too much bad lending. Really a fabricated market driven by overseas investments. No different to Docklands, no different to Hamilton Harbour. These areas, Zetland, they're working, people are living there, but I tell you what, they're not the places where we think you should be looking today. Again, as we look at the rolling index of Sydney, we can see values have fallen. This is where our opportunity lies. This is where things are now going to allow us to buy well. Houses in Sydney are sitting at $1,078,000 as an average. So they're expensive in Sydney. So today as a property investor, probably missed the boat at the median level of property of housing. Apartments, median level is 732. Today, we need to buy better than that to make sure that we're buying? Well, we want to buy at the lower end of the Sydney market and be dragged up by the benefit of the higher end. Yields today sitting at around 3.5% and 2.2% vacancy. So low yields. So if we can find a 5% yield, we know we're better than the average of the marketplace. We don't want to be buying a 3.5% yield because we have to pay too much out of our back pocket. The vacancy is considered pretty steady. A balanced market is 3%. We're at 2.2%. So Sydney market outlook, interest rates on hold, perhaps even a reduction. Local economy strength is strong, migration strong, affordable supply is low. There's not much stock that is affordable. So if you're going to find affordable stock, you're in a low supply dynamic. First homeowner market making up 11%. Unit living is really, really normal in Sydney today. Ask any young person if they want a house. It's a categorical no. They all are functioning around lifestyle, which is absolutely fine. Inner West is now best value. We're going to discuss a suburb in focus. And today we're drifting to the Inner West suburb, 12 kilometres from the CBD, known as Campsie. Great neighbourhood. You can pick up city skyline. It's not too far from the city itself. Inner and middle rings, two rings talking to each other. We're going to have a look at this dynamic Inner West powerhouse. So where is Campsie? Well, if we look at Sydney right at the top right and we flow west, we go through suburbs like Ultimo, Newtown, Enmore, Marrickville, Dulwich Hill, and we end up in the area of Campsie. It's very, very close to the city. In fact, the city keeps sprawling so much further. You can see Campsie picked up on the top right of your screen. It goes for miles, another 30, 40 kilometres after Campsie. So Campsie is really an inner middle ring neighbourhood. Campsie is a 3.3 kilometre suburb. It's got 9 parks. It's got a pretty healthy population of over 21,000 people. The population grew from 21,000 in 2011 to 24,000 in the last census. So it's good population growth. Predominantly, the age group of people in Campsie is that entry hipster, 20 to 29. And the current median house price of Campsie is 1.37 million. So it's not inexpensive, but of course Campsie is connected to the suburb of Canterbury. And of course, if you're trying to visualize what that actually means to Sydney people, the Canterbury Bulldogs are the team for Campsie. This is the neighbourhood. It's Bulldog country. And Canterbury is essentially Campsie. So great location, close to the city, and we can buy well because right now we're going through a trough. Here's what Campsie looks like. This is what it looks and feels like. Typical housing, older apartment complex. Beamish Street, which is its thoroughfare high street, old, grungy, typical of the Inner West grungy look and feel of Sydney. It's an old suburb. It's got a lot of history. It dates back really to the turn of the 19th the last century, and but it's always been functioning well, sitting 12 kilometres from the CBD of Sydney. Now, Sydney's 3 rings of new apartments. If you go to the inner ring, 5 kilometre radius, you can be paying really from $700 to $1 million. If you go to the middle ring, around 750,000. And if you go 50 kilometres out, typically you're entering the market in places like Richmond and Bankstown, $500,000 to $600,000. Today, because things have changed up, what that is actually doing is mean we can buy essentially for the same price in the height of the boom as the outer ring, but we're now drifting to the middle and inner ring at the same price. Great news. How to spot a hotspot? Well, today we're going to discover really there's 5 ways that a marketplace goes from really obscurity to the next level, which is where we want it to actually become the next hotspot. So the first element to the next hotspot is transport improvements and new infrastructure. Campsie is going through a big billion-dollar change. We're seeing literally the old metro being replaced with new metro, new town square in the suburb of Campsie. Now, Campsie has a 100-year-old rail line that takes you to the city. The future is, within 4 years, basically brand new rail system connecting Campsie into really Sydenham and into the city itself. What does this mean? Well, this means the area becomes more desirable because you're getting off the train in a beautiful neighbourhood, and the passage from the city is faster. When things are faster, more people want to live there. Time is worth so much money in real estate, and this piece of infrastructure is going to create a game changer when it comes to time. Infrastructure, Sydney Metro, it's coming to the neighbourhood, and it's a massive driver for the economy of this area. Infrastructure, it is a hotspot, literally billions of dollars being traded into this marketplace to create opportunity. Now, we can see that literally, if we look at the new rail network opening in 2024, begins in Bankstown, goes to Punchbowl, Wiley Park, Lakemba, Belmore, Campsie, Canterbury, Helston Park, Dulwich Hill. This is the game changer for this area. This is going to lead to a concept I'm going to talk about soon, known as gentrification. But it is very much underway. It is within budget. It is going to happen. Essentially, the rail network, there's some great YouTube links. Just Google yourself Sydney Metro, Campsie Metro Rail Link, Bankstown to Sydenham Metro line, and you'll start to see some really awesome infrastructure. So how to spot the next hotspot? Gentrification, the ugly duckling story. Well, here's the thing. Gentrification happens over time, and it generally starts with planning at a grassroots level, and policymakers become involved in developing the community, creating better strategies. And this is where we're really at with this stage of gentrification. We're at a planning and pioneering development stage. We are so early on. In fact, this is the ugly duckling story of 2018. Because for a property to become an area to become more wealthy, it has to go through change. It has to be seen as more desirable. And right now, Campsie is not seen as desirable. It is seen as a good marketplace, a solid area, but not desirable. So right now, hence lieth the opportunity to watch its desirability change. And in gentrification, there is a time frame for that to happen. Generally happens over a 10 to 15-year period, where you end up at the final stage of gentrification, where a better class of person moves into the neighbourhood, pricing out the older or pioneers of the neighbourhood. So I'm going to go through the 8 stages. First, grassroots level organisation. In other words, residents get together and go, you know what? Let's do something about Campsie. Let's make it a better place. Then planning happens, and planning instruments like better train lines, like better town squares. That happens from policymakers getting together and going, let's do this. Then, of course, new developers start to go, you know what? This area is awesome. Let's get in there and start to be part of the change. So right now we're at that part of the process. Still to come, intensive investment, population shift, the displacement of the old population, full look and feel transformation of the neighbourhood, and of course, turbo gentrification. This area is a battler neighbourhood, and it is luring in the trendies. From literally looking like this to actually transforming to a really beautiful inner hip neighbourhood. And don't be fooled by this stuff. This is what we want. This is we know we can buy well. Otherwise, I tell you what, go buy some capital growth that's happened elsewhere. Go pay double the price in a more established suburb. Knock yourself out. If you want to get into the Sydney market, if you want the rents to cover the mortgage, if you don't want to take on debt, you've got to keep listening to what I've got to say, because it's huge, it's powerful, it's going to be the next hotspot, the property ripple. Now, if we look at the 12-kilometre radius from the CBD, we can see that we are close in this marketplace. We are really close in Campsie. Equivalent neighbourhoods to the north, Lindfield, Manly Vale to the coastal north, Little Bay to the south. Campsie is as close to the city as these suburbs. We can see just how it links. Some of the best names in real estate, from Freshwater to French's Forest to Gordon to Ryde to Marsfield, literally linking to this ring of Sydney. Now, when we look at Campsie, and we look at all the other suburbs in the ring of 13 kilometres, basically sitting on the 13-kilometre shelf or thereabouts, guess what? Campsie's the least expensive by a country mile in some instances. By way of example, Lambie Heights, 12 kilometres from the city, nice suburb, quaint area, nothing special, $1 million and $1,060,000 for an apartment. Makes no sense to me. You'd never get the rent there. You would be in a lot of debt. You would be in mortgage stress by buying there. Let's follow where the yield variation matches a good purchase price. Again, every suburb, Bexley North, Strathfield South, Enfield, Liberty Grove, Brighton Les Sands, Ryde, Rhodes, Elwood, North Strathfield, North Ryde, Matraville, North Manly, Forestville, Manly Vale, Homebush, Concord, Lambie Heights, Strathfield, Lindfield, Clara, Queenscliff, Manly, Kemah, Killarney Heights, Malabar, Banks Meadow, Roseville, East Lindfield and Clempton Park, all more expensive. Everything on the ring is more expensive. So this is leading us to opportunity. And today we can purchase essentially for less than 499,000, around 475,000 for a great one bedroom. But guess what? The second-hand marketplace is more expensive. So all of a sudden, because of the disconnect in finance in the market right now and the slowing in the trough, we're buying brand new, less expensive than second-hand. Pretty powerful stuff. Campsie one bedrooms, 474 net with a median house price of 135. This is what we're looking at. Yield of 5%. Look at Lindfield, 810,000 for a one bedroom on a 3.7% yield. You are taking on debt. You are working for the bank in Lindfield. In Campsie, you're working for yourself. The yield is paying you. You are not working for the bank. Little Bay, 749, 3.9% yield. The bank is making the money. You are paying the bank. Don't do it. Manly Vale, 760 to 700, 4.1%, a little better, but still you are paying the debt. Campsie, right now, you can get the yield, which is going to pay the mortgage for you. You're not doing anything. You're just controlling the asset. And away we go. So how to spot the next hotspot, supply and demand? Well, Campsie has a really good absorption rate. It's got a great local sales community. Everything gets soaked up within 12 months of being taken to market. In other words, all new projects get absorbed and the market is a really, really healthy marketplace today. So how can we make money in this Sydney suburb today? Ways to make money. Well, for a start, today, if you buy well, which we're going to do today, is buy really well. We're going to buy less expensive than the second-hand marketplace. Let's have a look at the second-hand marketplace. You can see old, decrepit buildings last sold for $499 at the top of your screen at London Street. Actual sales price $485. You're buying less expensive than that brand new. Look at the state of that place. I would not own that if you paid me. What about Mackinder Street, Campsie, a brand new, recently complete property, sold for $600,000 for a one bedroom. over $125,000 more. This person paid at the peak of the market. They're going to do their dough, not us. We're going to buy well. What about the one below it, 550? Again, going to do their dough. We're buying below that. We're going to come in less expensive because we're negotiating well. We're going to make money by virtue of the first stage of this, which is property growth. Then you can pick up something cheaper. Look at this property sold for $395 in Campsie, but look at it, just you couldn't, to renovate that, that's 50 grand. You'll never get the outside renovated in your lifetime. It's got no benefit to the market. It's just old. It's just old. Look at all the news though. They're trading so well. 568, 448, 548, 548, 529. This is the numbers we want to see. If we're buying brand new, we're going to buy it the same as the second-hand marketplace or less. In fact, what we're getting is a brand new property, new kitchen, new bathroom, structural warranties, you name it, when compared to the same price as a 1960s old walk-up. That is good value. So that's how we're going to make money from the get-go. But we're also going to learn some lessons from the past cycle. And I'm going to talk to you about my experience, what happened to me buying in this neighborhood. I actually bought 3 kilometers away from Campsie in the start of the last cycle, doing exactly this strategy. And I bought a property in the suburb of Dulwich Hill. Dulwich Hill sits 3.2 kilometers from Campsie and really was the ugly duckling story of the last cycle going back to 2008. We're in 2018 right now, 10 years on, 10 years after the last cycle. In 2008, Dulwich Hill was considered a very undesirable neighbourhood. Today, it is considered great. In 2008, the Sydney market was really, really flat. It was going through a trough. No one wanted to buy real estate. 10 years later, the Sydney market is going through a trough. No one wants to buy real estate. We've gone a full cycle. What does this mean for you? You can learn from the history of the past. I'm going to teach you a little bit about what happened to me through my experience so you can actually understand how you can make some money out of this property, not you paying the bank, letting the tenants pay the bank for you by also making some money yourself. So the smart thing to do today is not buy in Dulwich Hill. It's actually find the next hotspot, which is next door. And that next door today is Campsie. Amazing. Now, if we look at the cycle point, we can see that when I purchased the property I'm going to show you, I purchased it in June 2008. In June 2008, the Sydney market was being hit, very much like it is being hit now. I did a similar deal. I got a great price. I bought well. I got a discount. I bought in a low. The reality is a low is a very good point to buy real estate. Why? Because you have negotiating power. Today, we're going to look in a low. Dulwich Hill, June 2008 is when I purchased my property. Today, June 2018, August 2018, September 2018, Campsie. This is where we're at. We're in the low. So we're doing exactly the same strategy, just a different point in the cycle. The ugly duckling story of 2018 was Dulwich Hill, 3.2 kilometers from Campsie. But things changed. Because when we purchased in Campsie, we knew we could get a good deal, but we also saw that transport improvements, new infrastructure, the suburb being gentrified, the low supply, and the ripple was all coming to Dulwich Hill. In 2008, we bought these properties. Myself and many of my clients, there was about 55 of us all together. We jumped into this property. 115 Constitution Road in 2008 was discounted by 10%. A $485,000 property was bought for $415,000. A massive $70,000 benefit. We got in very, very inexpensive when compared to what the market value was. Here's a look and feel of the properties. They were great properties for their time. The equity recycled point for Dulwich Hill was actually around 2.5 years later in 2010. That $70,000 benefit was recycled. And I want to talk to you and play you this quick little video so you understand the concept of your first recycle point. Because if you're going to buy in Sydney today, you're buying in a trough. And you want to know when you're going to recycle your first amount of equity. In other words, if you put $30,000, $40,000 into a property, $50,000, $60,000 into a property in Sydney today, when will you actually see the ability to get another deposit, recycling that deposit? Hey everybody, in real estate, there are 4 forms of capital growth. The first way to make money or to make growth out of a property is actually buying well. We call that property growth. And today I want to talk to you about the strategy known as discounting. Very good example happening right now in the Sydney property marketplace. Sydney, of course, has been going so well for so many years. At some point, the slowdown begins. And right now, we're going through the part of the cycle known as a trough, where things are a little bit sideways. Well, I tell you what, that sideways movement allows you as a property investor to swoop in and buy really, really well. By way of example, properties that were trading for $550,000 this time last year now can be purchased for $475,000. That, of course, is a massive, massive discount. On this price point, that's 15%. If your property went up 15% in 1 year, you'd be really, really happy. How are we going to make that money? Well, we're actually doing it in reverse. We're asking for a 15% discount below the market value. When can we realize that? Well, if history is our guide, in Sydney, the trough doesn't last very long. In fact, in 2008, the last start of the trough within the cycle, things had picked up and gone back to a market normal by late 2010. So really, we've got around 2.5 to 3 year wait to recycle our discount back out in the form of equity. And our cash on cash recycle time is around 2.5 to 3 years. So we put our money into the market, we pick up an asset that we're only paying $475,000 for, that last year people were paying $550,000 for. We're gaining $75,000 worth of opportunity. We call this opportunity, and we realize that opportunity in a few years' time. More importantly, what it does is allow you to buy well in Sydney, which of course, for everyone who has ever come to Sydney or lives to Sydney just knows how expensive it is to actually even get into the market, let alone pick up a bargain at an entry level. So make sure you do your research, but discount a great strategy. So I hope that makes sense. But I tell you what, in 2012, Dulwich Hill, where we had bought those discounts, where we found properties worth $485 and picked them up for $415. In 2012, policy infrastructure changed and the light rail came to Dulwich Hill, just as the metro's coming to Campsie. This was a massive trigger for the gentrification of the neighbourhood. And you can see from this article in March 2012 that people are starting to talk about the gentrification of Dulwich Hill. It was a real ugly duck. No one wanted to live in Dulwich Hill. But all of a sudden it was on the map. People were going, well, hang on a minute. This suburb's actually really, really good. It's close to the city and it's going to be affected by new infrastructure changes, which are the light rail was coming. And this was a trigger for all the hipsters, all the young families, all the cool people that want to live close to the city to come to Dulwich Hill. And really by 2014, Dulwich Hill had grown again. And we'd seen with it some fantastic growth by virtue of the light rail. There's an old saying in real estate, demand gets off the train. So make sure you buy real estate close to train lines, because that helps you pay the bank, because your tenants are going to pay the bank for you. Remember, you don't want to be paying or making the banks wealthy. You want your tenant to do it for you. So in 2014, the value of a property that we bought for $415,000, recycled equity in 2010 of $485,000. We could recycle again 4 years after that, another $200,000. And the reason, Dulwich Hill had gentrified. Things had improved. Values were on the uplift. It had nothing to do with Sydney's property boom at this point. And we call this in real estate location growth. So we first got deal growth. We got that by buying well in Dulwich Hill. Then we got location growth. And we did that by following the concept of gentrification. And then the boom came, the third extra element of growth. And this extra element of growth was led by Sydney. Sydney boomed everywhere, but not everywhere boomed as much as others. The fact that we had bought well, the fact that we had followed gentrification, saw us also take the value of this asset from $600,000 to $850,000. We started in 2008 at $415,000. By 2018, 10 years later, we had doubled our money. A classic story of doubling your money in 10 years in property. How was it done? Buying well was number one. Gentrification was number two. The fact Sydney is a massive economy and will grow at times, number three. So today, after the boom, you can see in Dulwich Hill, 1 bedroom, 1 car apartments trade at $810,000, $830,000 off the plan. So that's just 3 kilometers from Campsie. You're paying $830,000 for a 1 bedroom that will rent for $480 a week. You're paying the bank. You're making the banks wealthy. Your tenant's not doing that for you. Ridiculous. For us, after the boom, we bought 2 bedrooms. So 2 bedroom for $850,000 today, or $900,000 is where it's at. So I'm going to play you this again, explanation of really what happened with the gentrification of Dulwich Hill.
Hey there, everybody. Just behind me is a property I bought in the last trough of Sydney. I picked it up in about 2008, early 2008. Sydney was literally going through a trough at the bottom of its first trough of the news cycle. What happened is a whole bunch of us PRE clients got together and we got involved with this property back here called the Denison. It was a pretty good little purchase. The area, Dulwich Hill, where it is, sits about 8 kilometres from the CBD, 8 to 9 kilometres from the city. And it's so interesting because it's a really ugly duckling story. When we first came here, really no one wanted to buy. It was a little bit run down. And we picked up these babies behind us for pretty good money. We ended up buying them for a bit of a discount at the time. And it wasn't until about 2010 that the first equity point was created. Property I purchased was worth about $480,000 and I picked it up for about $415,000. And then about 2010, I was able to recycle that money out because we had literally gone out of the trough. So it was about a 3-year recycle point. But then things really took off in this neighborhood. Gentrification happened. And I'm going to show you some of the things which really triggered this price movement. This property, or my property today, is worth around $850,000. And a lot of it was to do with the ugly duckling infrastructure story of the inner west. But it wasn't until about 2012 until things really took off in this neighborhood. We'd got in early. We knew that gentrification was occurring. The main thing or driver was infrastructure. And below me sits the light rail of Sydney. This old disused rail line was converted into light rail. And today people of Dulwich Hill, well, they can head into the city using the tram. Such a powerful piece of infrastructure. What that tram did for the area was brought extra demand. And all of a sudden, gentrification, well, it really started to take off. And what that meant was, well, new buildings were created, new dining precincts were implemented, and the foodies really started to come to town. You might just pick up the tram coming in. Such a great, powerful piece of infrastructure for the neighbourhood. Really, really turned things around for the suburb. Today, it's one of the most popular places to live in Sydney, without question. It's a real thoroughfare of activity, of infrastructure, and will get you to commerce quickly. My family's had a long association with the suburbs around the inner west. In fact, my brother was born in the inner west, and is one of the foodies that actually came to this area to gentrify it. He started In-N-Out Pizza, which now serves a hell of a lot of pizzas to all the people that live in the inner west. He's done really well out of it. But the foodies, when they come to town, so does the gentrification story. And this area is a classic story of the coffee culture hitting the neighborhoods and so many wealthy people then flowing in off the infrastructure around the area. That extra demand has pushed up prices. Today, an average 2-bedroom brand new is circa $1 million, an average 1-bedroom brand new around $750,000. My property, which is now sort of 10 years old, needs a bit of a renovation, but I could push it up to the $1 million mark. It's probably worth about $850 right now. But I tell you what, when the foodies come to town, you know you're in the right spot. But today, the ripple of real estate is pushing us a little bit further out. Today, really, things are too expensive in this neighborhood. But the story is something that we can learn on. Can we re-emulate the past? Sydney right now is going through a trough. We're literally bottoming out again. So where can we look? We've actually found and identified the next gentrification story in Sydney is nearby, about 3.5 kilometres from here. We're going to go to the suburb of Campsie. Hey everybody, I've just driven 7 minutes from Dulwich Hill, really close by, 3.5 kilometres. I'm on Beamish Street. This is really the busy street of Campsie. It's kind of where all the shops and banks and cafes are. Just over a crest of the hill there, I can pick up the beautiful city skyline. So Campsie is actually a really beautiful suburb. When you get out into the back streets, it's really, really pretty. Beautiful houses, quite a nice neighbourhood. I tell you what though, it is good value today. And it's really the new gentrification story of the inner west of Sydney. Very much so. All the other suburbs are now really, really, really expensive. In fact, if you like paying for other people's capital growth, you should go back to Dulwich Hill where I bought literally 10 years ago. You can pay me double of what I purchased the property for 10 years ago. But the new gentrification story is actually here in Campsie. Today, very much the Sydney market is troughing. And what that is doing is creating opportunity. Right here in Campsie, you can buy brand new and pick up a bargain. Simply put, a 1-bedroom that should be worth about $580,000, you can pick it up for circa $500,000 today. Considering back at Dulwich Hill, just 3.5 kilometres away is around $850,000 for brand new 1-bedrooms. A real bargain. But the real story here is gentrification. And very much like what we learned from Dulwich Hill, we find an ugly duckling story before the demand finds it. This is the key to gentrification. One of the big drivers here is Metro. Today, the big story is the Bankstown-Sydenham Metro line in Sydney. Just like the light rail came to Dulwich Hill.
Well, looks like that cut out there just at the end. I'm not sure why, but see if we can start it again. Maybe
Three millions of dollars of upgrades, and right now you can get a discount in the Sydney marketplace and really position yourself to do what I did in Dulwich Hill, but here in Campsie, just 3.5 kilometres away. So check out what we're up to. Sydney right now is going through a little bit of a trough. The last trough that happened, they usually run around 2 to 3 years before things improve. Sydney is a big city. It has 5 million residents. It's a beautiful place, and it's going to reach the milestone of 8 million people. So you won't be keeping Sydney down for very long. The skill involved right now is buying in the trough and actually recycling your money, positioning yourself well for the next property uplift that, of course, Sydney will get over time. With 8 million people suggested to be making up the framework of a giant city. Owning real estate in the middle ring is a pretty smart move if you're building a portfolio. So get stuck in.
So interesting. Thanks for listening to that. I hope it's kind of helping educate you. I'm trying to serve you so you can understand what the logic of this growth that you can get from a place like Campsie is going to how it's going to work. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to use a property which has been traded a few times in Constitution Road, back in Dulwich Hill. And we're going to look at the first transaction on the 4th of July 2008. Effectively, that property sold for $416,250. It was bought from the developer at a discount. You can see a year later, effectively a year later, the owner, Witten at the time, was sold and capitalized on owning the property for a short period of time and sold for $450,000. Now, again, we have to use our imagination here, but you can see the equity return point happened around a year and a half after the first initial discount. So you can see the recycle time happening there. Now, essentially a year later, the recycle time was better, but I tried to find out of those properties that were all purchased in that building, one that had sold during the 3 phases of growth. First phase, discount. Second phase, getting your equity recycle point. So we can see the equity recycle point from the 4th of July to the 27th of October. True discount realized with the sale. Imagine you had a home loan. You're essentially doing the same thing, but with a bank recycling equity. Then in the 7th of October 2011, we can see that Eaton comes in and buys off Witten at $512,000. This is really where the gentrification story is starting to hit Dulwich Hill. And people are going, you know what? This suburb's awesome. This suburb's close to the city. The light rail's going to come. I've got to get in here early and be part of the gentrification story. Second form of growth. First form of growth, property growth. Second form of growth, gentrification. Eaton was buying gentrification growth. Witten was buying discount growth. And along comes poor old Baron Ashwin, who pays $840,000 this year for a gentrified Dulwich Hill, a beautiful suburb. Barone wants to live in a beautiful neighbourhood. Good for you, buddy. You've paid a lot of money to get into a great suburb. But we can see that that was property market growth. We've seen the discount happen, the gentrification happen, and we've seen the market grow. So all of a sudden, an $840,000 sale occurs. Now, this is a great lesson for you as a property investor to consider the same concept, but to do it right next door, the next suburb along, Campsie. Suburb which is still an ugly duckling story. Campsie is a cultural belt, and it's got some great cultural demand. Cultural belts are worth money in real estate because more of one culture wants to live in the suburb than anywhere else. Now in Sydney, for Chinese Australians, there's 3 great suburbs which link to them as part of the cultural belt. There's Chatswood, there's Hurstville, and there's Campsie. If we look at the 3 dynamics of them, you can see the ancestry of Campsie, 31%, born in China, 22%. Chatswood, 34%, born in China, 20%. Hurstville, much higher. But look at the price difference. They're all around the same distance to the city. Chatswood's 10 kilometres to the city. The median house price of $2.2 million. Campsie, 12 kilometres from the city, $1.3 million. Hurstville, further out, 16 kilometres to the city, $1.5 million. Median unit price, Campsie beats them all, beats Chatswood and Hurstville. Again, for the affluent Chinese market, Campsie is now the place to be. This adds to demand. And also, Campsie is a hospital belt with Canterbury Hospital linking the infrastructure of the area. So major hospital, big part of Sydney's town plan, important epicenter of health. And of course, this is a great driver for yields and cash flow and workers. So who should I deal with? Well, you can't just buy anything in Campsie. You can see that you could quite easily pay much more than what you need to. Today, we are going to deal with some of the best people in the market in real estate. Some key figures to understand: good levels of growth, great yield, low vacancy, great walk score, good transit score, and good levels of growth. So who we're going to deal with? We're going to deal with Arden, who are a famous property developer, and they're backed by retailer. And that retailer is Gerry Harvey. Of course, Gerry Harvey is the famous retailer of Domain. And working with Arden, who have financial backing from Gerry Harvey, is great because Gerry Harvey is a smart man. He is a retailer. He knows that leaving real estate on the shelf, trying to get the highest possible price for it in a slow market makes no sense. If you're making a living and a lifetime and becoming the best of your art by selling TVs and furniture, you know at some point you have to shift the property. So guess what? We're getting a $75,000 discount below market value by virtue of dealing with a smart retailer. Fantastic news for everyone. But is Arden, the development group, good? We use this all the time to show render to reality. This was a terrible situation that happened to people who bought properties. They thought they were getting this beautiful green wall and they ended up with that pop plant. No-name developer, spreadsheet developer, you wouldn't know them. They don't have any brand association. Of course, Gerry Harvey wants you to have a good experience. Arden want you to have a good experience. So because they are real people with real reputations, they build properties well. Here's a render, here's a reality. Here's a render, here's a reality. Here's a render, here's a reality. They build to what is important. So I tell you what, you're dealing with the right people. You're not only getting a $75,000 discount below market value in a gentrification hotspot with a rent that pays the mortgage, but you're dealing with the right people. This is what the property is going to look like. How cool is this? Look at that city view. This is the rooftop terrace. Absolutely going to be stunning. Vertical living is the new thing of real estate. Beautiful looking building, beautiful facade, beautiful apartments. Soft inclusions and nice inclusions for good value for the money you would be paying. I think they've done a great job and I know they're going to do well. But here's the thing, you don't have to buy off the plan. The reality is there's around 6 months left before construction completes. And right now you can even get a 6-month finance pre-approval from a bank telling you what you can and can't borrow. So the good news here is you don't have to take the long-term risk of off the plan. The building's nearing complete. You can actually go and stand in the building, stand inside a very useful display and literally see what you're buying. But that's a great shot, picking up all the way back into the city, just how suburban that middle ring is of Sydney. So how can I expect to make money over the next 6 months? Well, the first is the discount, 15% below market value. The second is Campsie's 12 kilometres from the city, so it's a good place to buy. Anywhere that close to a major city that's going to become 8 million people is a good place to buy. How the discount works, essentially $50,000 against price of other comparable stock, second-hand and first-hand stock, and $25,000 or 5% in essentially cash. So how that works is you can take it as an incentive off the price, or you can actually use it as a refund. So pretty good, right? You end up with instantaneous money. There's 5% yields, with Sydney is at 3.5%. So your yield variation, your tenant is paying the debt. Your tenant is paying the bank. Your tenant is making the banks rich. You aren't. And this is the most important part. Most of Sydney is so negatively geared that it costs your back pocket so much money. I don't want that to happen to you. So we've chosen this property because the rents will pay the debt, and that is what you want from a property investment in the Sydney market at this point in time. The Sydney market is very expensive, very, very, very expensive. To enter it is a negatively gearing nightmare. So we have to work off markets where the yield is going to pay the debt. So the vendors will even rent guarantee the property. That's a 3-month rent guarantee. It's the new ugly duckling story of Sydney. Existing stock will become even more expensive if the ripple hits. Sydney is a global city. It's going to reach 8 million people, 5% rebate, valuation support, finance support for the area. All the banks will lend there. They'll lend 90%. No problem. There's no oversupply issues. It's great. Here's the top reasons to invest in Campsie. The inner west story is very strong. Demand is on the rise. Metro upgrades. The yields are some of the highest in Sydney. Campsie is a cultural belt and a hospital belt. It has demographic drivers that is going to change. Gentrification is coming. The foodies, the hipsters, and the early adopters are coming to the market. The location has great support from transport and hospitals and good lending support. So the 4 forms of growth, let's go through it. First way, how are we going to buy well? We're going to get a discount. Column A, this is how we're doing it. Discount. This is going to create you at least 10% of value quickly. You're getting 5% day one. The second way you're going to make money out of this property opportunity is gentrification. The second column. Over the next 4 years, this suburb is going through rampant renovation. Gentrification is just the renovation of a neighbourhood. The suburb is being renovated. By virtue of it being renovated, the newspaper ads 3-4 years from now are going to be saying, go live in that neighbourhood. It has changed. People will then go and live in the neighbourhood because it is new, it is fresh, and they're going to pay extra from what you have already paid to get themselves into the neighbourhood. That has nothing to do with the property market. That has nothing to do with Sydney's growth. That is area-specific capital growth. So we've used deal-specific capital growth. Now we're using area-specific capital growth, being gentrification. Then, of course, the market is going to grow. That'll probably realistically won't happen for 6 or 7 years. So you need to buy well and you need to position yourself well for other forms of capital growth. Then, of course, design allows for inflation. So the best designed properties are going to do well. I think Jerry Harvey and the Arden Group done a great design on this property, one of the best in the business at the moment. So how does it work? Well, a 1-bedroom you can pick up for $499 as a face value, and then you're getting a refund at settlement of 25%. So you're paying $499. That's to keep the value strong in the building. The property's worth $450. You're paying $499, but then you're actually getting back 5%. So your net is actually $474. Pretty amazing to pick up a brand new property for $474 in Sydney. Those numbers haven't been seen in a long time. But look at the rent, $480, basically around a 5% yield. What does that actually mean? On a 1-bedroom, you're getting paid $26 a week after normal tax deductions to own the real estate. Essentially, we call that positively gearing. In other words, your tenant is paying the bank, not you. So good opportunity to get involved. Hope this information was helpful. I'm going to play you a quick video so you can get a quick look and feel for the actual complex itself and see what you think.
You're invited to become part of a luxurious brand new precinct in Sydney's inner west. Introducing Emporia by Arden. A boutique collection of illustrious architecturally designed buildings with a mix of affordable 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. Located in the bustling hub of Campsie, the suburb is renowned for its central locality, thriving business centre, and best of all, the vast selection of eclectic restaurants and food options. Positioned only 12 kilometres to the Sydney CBD, Emporia is within an easy walk to both Belmore and Campsie train stations. Campsie Centre, growers markets, and boasts an impressive 19 schools within a 5-kilometre radius. Offering a vast selection of apartments, each and every floor plan has been carefully considered. With spacious open-plan kitchens, living and dining areas, each apartment is fitted with the highest quality of fixtures and finishes, including state-of-the-art European appliances that come with a very generous 5-year warranty. Designed with a choice of either opulent dark or contemporary light colour schemes, each apartment includes timber look tiles throughout and is perfectly paired with the complementary colour palette, including carpet in neutral tones and white stone bench tops. With large balcony spaces and exclusive access to resident sky decks, Emporia is perfect for entertaining. With magnificent views across the Sydney and CBD skyline, and trendy boutique cafes and retail shops located on ground floors, residents will experience the ultimate in luxury. With a projected population growth rate higher than metropolitan Sydney, Campsie is being transformed and is reaping the benefits of billions currently being spent on infrastructure. And with an increasing number of white-collar workers moving to the area, and rent prices rising 4.7% per annum, property prices in the area are set to rise quickly. There has never been a better time and place to secure a luxury apartment. Be a part of something grand. Emporia by Arden. A brand new precinct awaits.
So thanks very much for listening. I hope the information helped serve you understand how to make some property growth by buying well, some area growth by understanding gentrification, learning from the history of the last property market cycle in Sydney, and thirdly, that you can actually still buy some great properties in Sydney without breaking the bank, without breaking your own back pocket and letting tenants do the work for you. And of course, from a beautiful place to live, I know so many people are listening who want to call this place home as a first home buyer. I tell you what, the design of the building is second to none. The location is absolutely beautiful. The rooftop decks, the internals, they'll feel like a beautiful place to live. People will be proud to call this particular development home. And I think whether that's just a stepping stone to the rest of your life, it is a really smart move to get in and buy well in a Sydney marketplace, but also buy a well-designed property which is going to serve you for the longer term. So congratulations. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.